Tuesday was the day for the Carolina Hurricanes at AHL.com. Basically give them all of the content necessary to talk about the team going into 25-26. From AHL edge stats to fantasy hockey to 3 questions about the Hurricanes, there's a lot to discuss when it comes to the team. But the one thing that's kind of fun to talk about is the future for the Hurricanes, especially their prospects. AHL.com did drop their top 5, so that's what we're doing today. We're going to be reacting to the top 5 prospects for the Carolina Hurricanes going into next season.
You're Locked On Hurricanes, your daily podcast on the Carolina Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Wednesday edition of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you to the Everyday for making this your first listen of the day, 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, talking everything about short Carolina Hurricanes. I'm your host, Zach Martin, the credentialed Carolina Hurricanes beat writer over at the Hawkers, also the co-host of the Surgecast, which is a weekly Carolina Hurricanes podcast, along with all of my duties here at Locked On Hurricanes. On the Wednesday edition of the show, we're going to be talking about the top 5 Carolina Hurricanes prospects going into the 25-26 season, as AHL.com senior writer Tom Gulitti put out his group of guys that he thinks will be either making the team this year or in next season. So we're going to be reacting to it. We're also going to talk about who I think will make the Hurricanes roster this season, even if it's out of camp or sometime during the year. And then who are my top 5 Canes prospects going into next season. But before we jump into all of that fun stuff, talking about prospects today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets as your first $5 bet wins. So, like I said, on Tuesday, AHL.com put out a slew of articles about the Carolina Hurricanes. Like I said, they were talking about AHL edge stats, 3 questions, fantasy stuff, and like I said, they even talk about top prospects for the Hurricanes. Senior writer Tom Gulitti put out his group. He has Alexander Nikishin number 1, Bradley Nadeau number 2, Nikita Artamonov at 3, Felix Ungersorm at 4, and Dominic Pindica at 5. Now, as he puts this when talking about all the guys, for him, he believes that Alexander Nikishin will make the NHL team this season, which makes a ton of sense because right now Nikishin is kind of penciled in to make the defensive core for the Hurricanes this upcoming season. It makes a lot of sense because, that's what it's basically what it comes down to at this point. He also says that Bradley Nadeau is going to make the Hurricanes roster this season in terms of AHL arrival. Now, he's not talking about out of camp, but he thinks that at some point this season that he will make his arrival to the AHL, and it's not for a 1 or 2 game basis like we saw last season. It's permanent or for a good chunk of time. And I do agree with that. I think Bradley Nadeau will do that. We'll talk about that more. Nikita Artamonov, he says that his arrival won't be till the 27-28 season, which makes a lot of sense for the fact that he is signed to be in the KHL through the end of the 2026-27 season, but he believes that he will be NHL ready by that time. So we are still a good bit away from Artamonov making his NHL appearance until the 27-28 season. Then he goes to Felix Ungersorm. He thinks that Ungersorm will make his NHL arrival for the 26-27 season, and the same thing for Dominic Pindica of making his NHL arrival next season as well, along with Felix Ungersorm. So out of the top 5, he's got 2 guys making it next season at number 4 and number 5 for Ungersorm and Pindica. Artamonov is going to be a 27-28 arrival, but his top 2 choices of Nikishin and Nadeau are going to be this season. And he does have a lot of quotes from assistant general manager Darren York. When talking about Nikishin, Darren York says, to be able to have the game slow down as quick as it did for him in the playoffs is really something that attributes to just how high of a prospect he can be. The way he wants to play exactly how the Carolina Hurricanes play, it really fits with his ability to get up and play and be aggressive, which is very true when you look at Alexander Nikishin. And with the fact that he only played, a very handful of games in the playoffs, didn't really play in the regular season last year, but he saw as the playoffs went along, he did get a little better over time. There was a couple games he did struggle, but I mean, it's his first time playing in North America, and it's a very big ask to be in a, game 5, you advance past the second round against the Washington Capitals, and then you play a few games in the Eastern Conference Final against the now back-to-back defending champion Florida Panthers. That's a tough ask to come into a league that you've never really played in on AHL-sized ice compared to what you play in the KHL. So it's a big task, but he did get better as time went along, so it's definitely exciting for him. When talking about Bradley Nadeau, Darren York said, the goal scoring probably took a little bit to get going for what his expectations are of himself, but for a player to do what he did at 19 years old and score 32 goals and 58 points is exceptional. Very exceptional for the fact that it was Nadeau's first professional season in hockey, and the way he did that too. He was an all-AHL rookie team as well. Nadeau has proven time and time again from the BCHL, the Penticton Vs, 113 points in 50-something games. He goes to Maine in his lone year in the NCAA, scores 19 goals, has 46 points. That's very impressive as well. Just doing that we did with the Maine Black Bears. And then it comes to the Wolves, led the team in goal scoring, third in points, second in assist. Like, Nadeau really proved himself of how good he is. Second in points, third in assists, but he has really shown that his shot is AHL ready right now, and he is the top forward prospect for the Carolina Hurricanes. When talking about Arnamonov, York said, another player that sort of fits the mold in how we play with the intensity and tenacity. He's able to show on the forecheck to go hunt pucks and retrieve them, and then be able to make the next read. At the same time, with his off puck movement, he's able to find open space, and when he gets it, he doesn't need much room to put it in the back of the net. That's what's so good about Arnamonov, for the fact that he took a step in his second AHL season when it comes to the AHL playing for Novgorod, is the fact that he led the team in goals and points as a 19-year-old. His 22 goals last season in the KHL was a record for a guy under 20 years old, surpassing Kirill Kaprizov, who scored 20 back in the 16-17 season. So that's how good Arnamonov is the fact that as a 19-year-old in the KHL, which is the second best league in the world when it comes to hockey, he scored 22 goals and set a record and led his team in goals and points. He is a very exciting forward, and I know everyone's going to be ready for the 27-28 season when he's able to come over to North America and make an impact like he can. So imagine what this core is now, and then you add Arnamonov in a couple seasons. When talking about Felix Ungerstorm, Darren York said, when he played against his own age at the World Juniors, he saw the elite offensive thinker. We brought him to North America a year earlier than most, and it was a good learning experience for him, which, is pretty good for another 19-year-old guy who's, got 5 goals, 20 points in 61 games. Yes, it's not to the level that you saw from Bradley Nadeau, but Ungerstorm does have a lot of skill sets. He's really good. He's a good offensively aware thinker when it comes to what his skill set is. So give another full season, maybe 2. I think you're going to be looking at really good possibilities for Ungerstorm moving forward. And then talking about Dominic Pendica, he's another guy who's very, very exciting. Played only 2 games for Chicago in the AHL, but, 2 goals, 5 points with Malmo in the SHL. Pretty good for all things considered. And then for the, he only played in 4 games for the U20 national team for Malmo Jr. Did have a goal and 2 points in his 4 games. So almost a half point per game just in that short time span, but did make a lot of strides with the senior team in the SHL over there in Sweden. So when you look at this top 5, it really does make a lot of sense for Gulitti put those guys in. I think if you're looking at the top 5 prospects, I think that you cannot look at a better group of guys that fit a top 5 for the organization. The fact you got Nikishin, who's probably going to come right out of camp. Bradley Nadeau has a chance to make it out of camp, or at least at some point this season. Then you got Arnamonov in a couple seasons with him being over the KHL, and then to give another full season of progress for at least Pendica, because he only had a very limited number of time in Chicago. But even Ungerstorm, to give him another full year in the American Hockey League, I think Ungerstorm could be a guy that could maybe make some noise for the 26-27 season. So overall, I think Gulitti was pretty much spot on with his top 5. I know Kane's prospects and those guys, with Nick and, Soma, they might have a different perspective of what the top 5 is. But if you're talking about what Tom Gulitti from NHL.com is talking about, I think this is a very solid top 5 group. Now, for me, who do I think could make the Hurricanes roster this season? Well, stick around. We'll talk about it here in a second on a Wednesday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game more exciting. You're already following the action, so why not make it a little bit more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get on the game while your friend's getting sunburned at the beach. It's easy to use, fast to pay out, and makes even regular season games feel like must-watch events. Whether you're placing a same-game parlay or watching a bet right into the 9th inning, FanDuel makes it feel like you are part of the action. So if you're new to FanDuel, well, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. Welcome back to segment 2 of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day. So when looking at who makes the Canes roster for the 25-26 season, I'm on the same page with Gulitti saying that I believe that there are prospects, like the guys that we're talking about, who has the best chance to play for the Hurricanes this season. And we're talking not just like 2 or 3 games or just a handful. We're talking a good chunk of the season. The first one is pretty much obvious. It's going to be Alexander Nikishin. He's probably the most exciting guy to watch coming into the AHL this year, especially for someone who's only played a handful of games and it's all playoffs. I know everyone's looking forward to all the other guys that maybe have gotten drafted recently or even last year's draft who are, very poised to make it to that jump as rookies this upcoming season. But I think Nikishin is probably a top 3 guy when it comes to all rookies to watch. Is going to make an impact and be very exciting this season. I think when you look at what Nikishin can do, high offensive upside, he's got the speed, he's got the physicality, he's got that two-way game to him. He was the captain for SKA St. Petersburg for the last couple seasons. Talking about records across the board as a defenseman, considered one of the best defensemen in the KHL. And that's talking a guy who's only played 3 full seasons over there, 2 as a rookie at 22 and 23. It's a no-brainer why Nikishin is so exciting to watch. And it's crazy to think, too, that we talked about it on the Monday show, and I wrote an article about it at the HockeyWriters.com, talk about how the defense is kind of being a possible vulnerable asset for the Hurricanes this season, when this makes no sense when you already have the guys you have in that group. And even with Alexander Nikishin, despite not having very many games under his belt, he's a guy that hockey talks, and if you know how to play hockey and you're very good at it and you can transition well, hockey's hockey. You know how to read that language and play that way. And with the fact that you got Jacob Slavin, Jalen Chatfield, Shane Gostisbehere, Sean Walker to help you lead the way, and you have Tim Gleason as your defense coach, you're going to be set. I think you're going to be totally fine if you're Alexander Nikishin. So when you look at a guy like that with his limited number of times playing in the league, I think he's going to be a great asset for the Hurricanes. Even if it's second defensive pairing or third defensive pairing, it doesn't matter. He's going to be a good asset. Like I said, you look at how they believe that the Hurricanes are vulnerable without having Burns and Orlov. Well, here's the thing. You got younger, you got faster, and you got more physical when you look at just adding Nikishin and even Miller. Like I said, adding Miller, he had 100 hits and 100 blocks last year. But look at Nikishin, a ton of block shots and hits over in the KHL, and knows how to hip check perfectly, which, it's an art that no one really uses anymore. But when you see guys throw some very clean, very good hit checks, you're very excited about it. So I think that's something that you can look at with Nikishin, and then that he will bring that style of play and that asset to the Hurricanes next season. And that's what's going to make it very exciting, for the fact that when you look at a guy who's going to make the roster right out of camp, it's going to be Nikishin without a doubt. So I'm not worried about, is he going to make it in? Is he going to Chicago? It's like, no, he's going to make the NHL roster. He looks very poised to make it. If from all indications, it looks like Nikishin will be with the Hurricanes coming right out of camp. Like, there's a lot of projected rosters out there, and he is automatically in every single one. I don't see him going to Chicago. Nikishin's going to be with the Hurricanes, and I think if you're talking about who makes it right out the gate, he is that guy to make it right out of the gate, no problems at all. And it's going to be very exciting to see what he can do for the Hurricanes this upcoming season. Now, one other guy who I think it's going to make it to the roster, either if it's out of camp or at sometime this season, but is going to be a permanent fixture in the roster, for me, it's going to be Bradley Nadeau. And I know a lot of people are like, okay, well, where's he going to fit in the top 6? Where is he, like, what is he really going to do? Because the wings are already so loaded up. What are you really going to do about getting him in there? And who are you going to take out and all that stuff? And for me, it's going to be very interesting what you're going to do with Bradley Nadeau. Because, yes, you got the wings. Right side, you got Seth Jarvis, Logan Stankoven, and Jackson Blake, also Eric Robinson. Left side, you got, Ehlers, Svechnikov, Hall, Martinook, and even Carrier. Obviously, someone's going to have to sit. It'll be very interesting to see how that works out. Now, let's say they move Stankoven or Jarvis to the center. Maybe that opens up a winger spot. Maybe KK moves down. Maybe we have an extra center. There's a spot for Bradley Nadeau in the top 6 if they go somewhere with that. They have a lot of places have Nadeau listed as a winger center. His center abilities are very limited, but he's done it before. Do the Hurricanes think, hey, if we can teach this guy to play a center, maybe he can do it? Who really knows? I mean, you're talking about a guy who is a right shot. Elite Prospects has him as a winger center. He's 5'11". He is 172. But if he gets to 180, that's still a pretty good size for a center. He's that right shot. Could he possibly be a guy that does there as well? I'm not sure. Like I said, he's very limited. But you look at a guy that from his last year at Penticton, he's a 2-time champion of the BCHL. 35 points in the playoffs in his last year in 17 games, 17 goals. 45 goals, 113 points in 54 games in his last year. Goes to Maine, 19 goals, 46 points in 37 games, the most in a long time. He was a plus 20 that year. His first year in Chicago, 32 goals, 58 points in 64 games. That's pretty good for a 19-year-old. He's on a very small list of guys who are in their teenage years and scores over 30 goals. So could he at some point come up to the team and be a winger? I could see where the Hurricanes might have to make a move to open up a winger spot for him, rather it's sitting someone down, getting someone traded and he slots in there, or maybe they throw one of their wingers into a center spot. That opens a spot for him. Or if they believe he could become a center, teach him and see what he can do there. Maybe that's an option. Maybe a center is the better way to go for him. Who knows? I don't think they're going to do that, but there is avenues, paths to go down for Nadeau. I think regardless of that, I think he's going to make the roster at some point this season. And we're not talking what we saw last year with like maybe a handful of games, like 2 or 3 guys are resting, stuff like that. I believe at some point during the 25-26 season, we're going to see Nadeau 14, 15, 16, maybe even 20 or more games and solidifies his spot within the Hurricanes roster. His shot at NHL level already. His scoring ability is off the charts. He has scored goals everywhere he's been, whether it's the BCHL, NCAA, AHL. Yes, the AHL is a completely different level, but he has proven time and time again he can score goals. He can play two-way hockey, and he has the ability to be an instant impact. His shot's already lethal. We know what he can do. He has 1 point already in 2 games this past season, 1 point in 3 games. Over the fact that you look at what he's done in this very small, limited window he's had, even when he's not scoring, you see he can make an impact just on setting up plays alone. So I'm very excited for Bradley Nadeau, and I think Nadeau this season will make the Hurricanes roster and will stay with the Hurricanes roster. I say this, by the end of the 25-26 season, if he makes the roster, I don't see him go back to the AHL. I see him becoming a regular at some point for the Hurricanes this upcoming season. When? Only time will tell, but I think it will definitely happen. So all that to be said, we talk about Tom Gulitti's top 5. We talk about who I think could make the roster this season, but who are my top 5 Hurricanes prospects? Well, stick around. We'll talk about it here in a second on a Wednesday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. Welcome back to segment 3 of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day. So when it comes to my top 5 prospects, I'm pretty much on the same line as Tom Gulitti's top 5 when you look at the guys that the Hurricanes have as of right now. I don't really see very much of a difference when it comes to where the Hurricanes guys are at in terms of prospect stats, where they're looking at in terms of right now. I think one is definitely Alexander Nikishin. It makes sense for him to be number one. I see him as the number one. Yes, he's going to make the Hurricanes roster. So could you call him a prospect? Yes, he still is. Hasn't played any regular season games. So yeah, he's still bona fide as a prospect, still bona fide as a rookie status. And it's a no-brainer. Alexander Nikishin, without a doubt, is a number as a prospect and is the number one guy in terms of the Carolina Hurricanes organization. At number 2, obviously, I love this guy a lot. He's a really great hockey player. He is definitely going to be my number 2 guy and my number 1 forward for the organization. That is Bradley Nadeau. His shots are lethal. I've liked his game since Penticton, even in Maine, and of course what he did with the Chicago Wolves. Bradley Nadeau, without a doubt, he is that guy who is a number 2 prospect when it comes to the Carolina Hurricanes organization, and someone who I think will make a solid impact at some point whenever he gets the opportunity to come up. Now, this is where it might change a little bit, and I think there's guys that I'm really excited for to see what they can do. One guy in particular I'm really excited for is Justin Poirier. Now, Poirier is going off. He played with Breakamo Drakar out of the QMJHL last year. 43 goals, 80 points in 58 games, 1.3 points per game, and all that stuff. He is going to the college ranks, so I'm very excited to see he can do in the NCAA this upcoming season. But this is where it's going to be really exciting to see what Justin Poirier can do and all of that. I think there's a lot of really good upside with him, and I think Felix Sungerstorm is a really great hockey player, I think he's in my top 5, but I think just when you look at what Poirier can do, I feel like I'm more excited to see what he can do with his offensive side and all of that stuff, and I think he's going to be someone to definitely keep an eye on. And here's the thing. Poirier is following the Bradley Nadeau footsteps of making your career better in terms of your growth. He is also going to the University of Maine. So the Black Bears have become a pipeline for the Carolina Hurricanes in terms of that aspect. Because you saw what Bradley Nadeau did with the Maine Black Bears. Now you got Poirier following that same stuff. Of course, another right winger, 5'8", 185, a right shot. He was 156 overall pick by the Hurricanes in 2024. But the fact that you look at a guy that in 2 seasons, actually his last 3 seasons in the QMJHL with Baie-Comeau, 28 goals, 48 points in 55 games in 22-23, 51 goals, 82 points in 68 games in 23-24, and then 43 goals, 80 points in 58 games. He just keeps putting up points year in and year out, and it got better as time went on. 48, 82, 80 points in 3 seasons, 28 goals, 51 goals, 43 goals. This guy has got a shot that's so unreal. Yes, as a QMJHL, maybe defense and goaltending maybe isn't the best, but he's got a shot to do it. In the playoffs in 23-24, how about 18 goals, 27 points in 17 games? If you're asking me who my top 5 prospects are, you've got to put Justin Poirier there on the top 5, and I think he is the number 3 guy when it comes to the Carolina Hurricanes. He's got so much of an offensive upside. Yes, he's a little bit smaller, but he's got that scoring touch. And I'm so excited to see what we can do with the University of Maine Black Bears in the NCAA. Because you saw what Bradley Nadeau did, and now that pipeline for the Hurricanes runs through Maine to possibly Carolina, I think Poirier is going to put himself in a fantastic spot. Number 4 for me is going to be Felix Sungerstorm. We already talked about throughout this episode. He's an elite offensive thinker. The guy's got a lot of upside. I'm excited to see what he can do this upcoming season for the Chicago Wolves. Give him another full season in the American, let him get better and see where he goes from there. But if there's a guy to look at, I definitely think that he is my number 4 prospect when it comes to the Carolina Hurricanes. It just makes a lot of sense when you look at where this team is at right now. It's like I said, so you got your number one in Alexander Keisha for me. You got Bradley Nadeau at number 2. You got, Justin Poirier at 3, Felix Unger-Storm at 4, and I go Nikita Arnamonov at 5. Now, yeah, Gulitti has Arnamonov at 3 just because of what he can do. 22 goals in the KHL last year, set a record for 20-year-olds, beats a record, 39 points in 63 games. Just for the fact that he's at least he's coming in 27, 28. I'm only putting him at number 5 just because of the fact of just how far out he still is to come to Carolina. I'm not saying it's on skill or anything like that, but I think just the longevity of how long we have to wait a little bit longer for him. That's the only reason why I have him a little bit lower compared to a Poirier or an Unger-Storm. Unger-Storm is going to be next year for sure. Poirier could be next year or 2 seasons from now. Arnamonov is, like I said, 27, 28. So you're still talking another couple of seasons away for that as well. So that's my only thing with him, why I have him at 5 and not at 3. It's because of a little bit of a farther reach, but just for the fact that these 3 through 5 on my list with Poirier, Unger-Storm, and Arnamonov, you can interchange these guys at 3 through 5. You ask me 2 months from now, I could probably say that Arnamonov is a 4, or he is at 3, and then maybe Poirier and Unger-Storm are a different spot. But as of right now, just of my excitement level for these guys and what I think they can do, this upcoming season and what we could look at in terms of organizational prospects and depth, that's why I have Poirier at 3, because you see what he's done in the QMJHL. I'm excited to see what we could do in the NCAA level with all these Canadian Hockey League CHL guys coming down. So putting him at 3, Unger-Storm at 4, and Arnamonov at 5. There's a lot of case to be made to swap that around, but that's just where I'm coming at right now with those 3 guys. But 1 and 2, no brainers. It's got to be Nikishin. It's got to be Nadeau. Those are your guys 1 and 2. So that's kind of where I'm at. So if you're on the YouTube side of things, let me know in the comments, who are your top 5 prospects? Do you agree with me? Do you like Gulletti's list a little bit better? But who are your top 5? Let me know in the comments below. And if you're on social media, let me know there as well. What are your top 5 prospects when it comes to the Carolina Hurricanes? Once again, for me, it's going to be Nikishin, Nadeau, Poirier, Unger-Storm, and Arnamonov. Those are my top 5 Canes prospects going into the 25-26 season. But honestly, I'm super excited to see what these guys are going to do. I know we're going to see Nikishin this upcoming season for the Hurricanes. I'm really excited to see what he can do, what skills, assets he can bring to this team as the defense looks to take the next step. And as just as a team in a whole are looking to make that jump to the Stanley Cup final, and having Nikishin there, it's going to be a lot of fun to see him in that 21 Hurricanes jersey as they prepare for hopefully another deep run for the Hurricanes. I'm excited to see what Nadeau can do in Chicago, and hopefully we see him next year with the Canes, and of course with everyone else. Even Dominic Pendica from Guletti's list, I'm excited to see what he can do as well, along with what Unger-Storm, Poirier, and Arnamonov can do in their respective leagues of the AHL, NCAA, and the KHL. But overall, it's very exciting if you're a Hurricanes fan. If it's very exciting as well if you are a big fan of prospects, because there's a lot of great prospects within the Carolina Hurricanes organization and ones to keep an eye on for sure. But guys, this will be the Wednesday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. Thank you for making your first listen of the day. For your second lesson, well, go check out the Locked On NHL podcast, where there is no offseason. We bring you the daily league-wide stories that matter the most with the local coverage you love from Locked On. Find Locked On NHL on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. If you want to keep up with me, I'm at OneShoeZach on X. The podcast is _ Hurricanes. I'm also on Blue Sky, Zach Martin, where you can check out all of my stuff at thehockeyWriters.com. If you want to check out my other podcasts, well, it's the Surgecast on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. For Locked On Hurricanes, we're on Spotify, Google, Apple, iHeartRadio, wherever you listen to your podcast. Leave a 5-star rating and review, because I might just read it on the show. For YouTube, it's Locked On Hurricanes. Make sure to subscribe. Hit the bell notification so you don't miss a show. Hit the thumbs up to let me know if you like the show as well. Share it with all other Kings to become everydayers just like you. But I hope everyone enjoyed the Wednesday episode of Locked On Hurricanes. Enjoy your Wednesday. Hopefully the weather isn't too bad for everyone, because it's been raining like crazy down here in South Carolina. So hopefully it's not bad up there in North Carolina as well, or wherever you listen to your podcast. But Until next time, as always, let's go Canes.